And Tyler. We're going to record this.
I already
So we'll
started
kick
it.
into it. Okay, perfect. So this is week or session 3 of 3 for this month. So we're going to have, an ongoing cadence where we have these every month through the end of the year on a weekly basis for 3 weeks a month, not necessarily all four. It gives us the flexibility to change things around should an event come up or we need to pivot. So to kick it off, we've got Todd, who you just saw a minute ago. Todd is the founder and CEO of Envision. We've been a company for 27-ish years at this point, and Todd will be jumping in and adding some color to some of the parts later on. So I am Jay Longley, senior consultant. I work with Envision. I've been here for about 6+ years, but half of my career, half of the 28 years I've been in technology, largely was focused on being a CEO or in a technology company. So did a lot of different things in a lot of different verticals, but now I get to have fun and focus on the things that I like. So rather than dealing with the HR payroll, I get to jump in and do, work with organizations like yours and have fun architecting solutions, dive pretty heavily into cybersecurity. And for the past 3 to 4 years, I've had a pretty heavy focus on machine learning and generative AI. So we're going to talk about the iterations of where generative AI is going and where it has been over the next, 30, 45 minutes. All right, a little bit of housekeeping. So I'm actually going to mute this real quick. Oh, perfect. So a little bit of housekeeping. So this is not a webinar. We could set it in webinar format. We don't want to set it in webinar format. We want to make this interactive, right? So at any point, if you have a question, if at any point you want to jump in and interject and talk about different experiences, feel free to. Don't be shy. You can certainly jump in and talk and interrupt me. I'm welcome to that. I enjoy that. Brandy, Matt, my team, we're going to be monitoring the chat throughout. So if you have a question, you don't want to necessarily jump in or interrupt, you can certainly just put it in chat. They'll be monitoring it. They'll bring it to focus. You can raise your hand, your virtual hand. And at the end of this, we'll receive a copy of the presentation. So here's a full-on disclaimer. Right. So we believe in live demos. We're Envision. We like live demos where possible. Because it is a live demo, this is a live Teams environment. This is a live Copilot environment. This is a live business environment. So at times, I'll be pulling things off screen and on screen. I'll be judging where the information is. You've heard it the last couple of weeks, but just wanted to repoint that out. There's also things that can go wrong, right? Things that are beyond our control. Microsoft from time to time could have issues on their system, or recently they had a denial of service attack that would be impactful for this. So should something like that happen, we're going to roll with it. We'll take the presentation where it leads, and if we have to postpone, we certainly will. We can always pick it up a different week. Let's see. So our agenda for today. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things, right? We're largely going to focus on prompting and adoption, but let's kick it off with files, folder, names, and versioning. I touched on it a little bit last week, and it's some foundational information that you're going to want to know. I don't have to go deep dive into it, beyond today and beyond this agenda slide. But as far as file folders and naming, let's talk about versioning. And versioning, just so we set the stage, is you can build one single file, like for example, the presentation you're looking at. You build one single file, and within that file, we enable versioning, right? And what that is I create the first version, and then I send it to Brandy and Matt, and they add the marketing flair to it, and then I send it to engineering, and engineering edits it, and then I get it back, and I create the final version of this presentation. Having all that data contained within this one single file with versioning enabled allows my AI, my generative AI, my Copilot, to look at how I built files start to finish to get to the endpoint. It learns how I build presentations, as you see. The reason that we like to do it this way is because it's a solid story beginning to end. The other way, in the past that many organizations do, and I'm still guilty of it as well, is I would create an initial version of the file. And then I would send it to, Brandy and Matt, and they would create a dash marketing. And then we would take that and send it to engineering, and they create a dash engineering version. And then we'd have a dash final version or a dash final, right? So at the end of the day, you have 4 or 5 versions of it. 75% of the data, the presentations, are largely incomplete, not finished, right? So AI is learning on an incomplete version, incomplete, and then you get the final version that has everything you want it to, but it didn't learn how you got there, right? So The reason we wrap together versioning is because it tells a story start to finish as opposed to partial data, and that'll be beneficial later on. But just know that when we get into this pretty heavily, AI is looking for that story so it can mimic how you use data and how you interact with it. Prompting and prompt engineering, what that is at a high level, it's how to train users like you and I, how to train us and how we interact with AI, and also to train AI and how it interacts with users, right? Because they have a different type of mechanical brain, we'll call it, and we have our own organic brain. We have to learn how to interact. We have to learn how to iterate and communicate properly, and we're going to do that today. That's called prompt engineering. User adoption is largely along the lines of how has the business how has a business taken on the technology you presented it? Has the adoption gone successfully or not? We have a couple of different ways to measure that. And then, like always, we love demos. I'm a demo guy. I learn visually. I don't learn by people talking at me, right? I never have. I'm just a visual hands-on person. So we'll dive into a bit more of the demos. And with that, so this is, again, week 3 of 3. We're going to be doing this through the end of the year. So today our focus is on building the adoption plan, training, measuring, and adjusting. Prior, we had talked about securing AI. We'll look at that in a quick minute. We also talked about last week about configuring, tailoring, extending it, creating custom co-pilots and where we needed to go with that. So as far as our journey, today we're on session 3. So let me do a couple of quick things on this, if I can get my stylus out. So if you remember, week 1, we focused on security, compliance, and privacy. We talked quite a bit about that. You need foundational elements, including labels, right? And all sorts of securities around it. So that way the data itself is protected and delivers internally the results to you and to your teams that AI wants to deliver. It's not delivering things it shouldn't. Last week, we dove pretty heavy into the internet, search and index. We talked about some bespoke models. We've talked about the Microsoft Graph and language learning. We're going to dive a little bit more into 365 apps today, but we talked a little bit about that before. And then we've also talked about connecting the data and some of this. So now, this week, we're really going to wrap it all together as far as the user interaction piece, which is here, Microsoft 365 apps and prompting those apps too. So steps for success. For me, so we'll give me one second. So for me, like I was saying, things make more sense when I can touch, learn, and apply what we do with those models. We need a way to measure the adoption and reinforce the learning that we've taken place, right? So as you train your users, you want to see that they understand it. You want to jump in and guide them because user adoption is a process. You can't just train them once and then expect them to know it. You have to train them, do reinforcement learning, adjust as necessary for things, as simple as naming files, which is going to be different, right? Interacting and creating versions of files, developing prompts that are effective. So you're going to want to measure and reinforce the learning that's taken place. We want to also go ahead.
Can I jump in? Can I jump in on that a little bit?
Yep.
So, on the audience side, we always talk about trying to define audiences for AI. And I'm going to real quickly share my screen and show you one that I was just doing with another client. So when we talk about audiences in AI, what we're really saying is AI is not a one-size-fits-all conversation, right? So, Copilot isn't Copilot isn't Copilot. There's Copilot for finance, Copilot for developers. There are custom Copilots. There's Edge AI Copilot. There's all kinds of different tools here before we start getting into non-Microsoft tool sets like ChatGPT. So part of what we want to do is early in the adoption process, before we even start thinking about the training, is identify who our constituencies are. And so in this particular situation, in this conversation, I had, some task workers in this organization, users that we think will be occasional users of the AI tools we were thinking about, content creators, power users, and leadership, customers, and the general public. And there's probably versions of AI that fit almost every one of these constituencies. We might, for example, build a custom Copilot or a non-custom Copilot like a Warmly.ai that is a chat interface for the general users on our website and that's our general public facing tool. And I mean, Matt and I, my marketing director, were just talking with Warmly, but there's also Lucky Orange, there's a whole bunch of others like that. And then there's of course Microsoft. Internally, when we think about, our occasional users, the Microsoft Edge for AI is probably the way to go with them. Am I going to apply a $30 license a month to a user that is likely to never use the product or only very rarely? Probably not. I will train that population on Edge, right? But my content creators, my power users, leadership, those are the ones that are going to get my very tailored Microsoft Copilot extended for the organization and trained on organizational data. Um, and then I might have also a custom Copilot that I built that's got a very specific knowledge base and skill set that is meant for both internal employees all the way out through customers. So the idea is just, early on in the adoption cycle to start thinking through, what are the use cases? What are the constituencies for those use cases? And letting that help guide how you build the training plan.
So that's,
For this,
can you leave that slide back up for a second?
Yeah, you
Scott?
bet.
So that, I love the way you've broken that down. And so I just was curious about examples around you for the task workers. You have like the reactive AI. What can you give
Sure.
me an example of what that would look like, what that might look like?
100%. So Azure AI Studio, a good example would be if I've got well, I can give you a real world example, an engineering firm that I'm talking to, they do water runoff studies. And so, we can create a reactive AI model in Azure AI and feed it 5,000, topographical aerial photos of properties that had good water runoff and 5,000 that had bad water runoff, and create an AI model that just by uploading a photo will give you an approximation of what to expect. And so they've got this entire team of people that interact with prospective customers, and that's the first thing that they do is they get aerial photographs, and these people have to be trained to understand, how to look at that and kind of get an evaluation of how water runoff is going to work. We could automate all of that. So we could take that task work and we could make it so that literally customers right on their website could upload an image and the AI will analyze it and give them a pretty accurate picture of what runoff's going to look like. And that when there's a lower confidence score, when someone uploads, that is what goes to the task workers for review instead of everything, right? So that's an example of a reactive AI. Another reactive AI in an accounting firm would be tax organizers, right? And people fill out these tax organizers, and it's amazing to me the number that actually still fill them out by hand. Like actually with pen and paper are filling them out and mailing them back. But strangely, there's still a significant population in this country that do that. Um, there's no reason on earth that we can't be using an AI to take in that data, clean it, and automatically enter that, right? But that's a reactive AI model. It's built to do a very specific task. It's not necessarily generative. It's not conversational, right? So that's an example of a reactive AI.
And I like what you, it's, and I also got a good sense of that, so where the task worker fits in to the mix, right? So some things are going to be done with a very high degree of confidence and they can just be, kind of straight through processing. Whereas other things are going to be with less confidence are going to be escalated to human.
Yeah, and in fact, there is actually in AI Studio, there is an AI review console where you can have employees that's what they're doing is, and you can create rules and say, hey, even the ones that are high confidence, I want to spot check 5%
Okay.
that we process, right? And that just becomes a validation, and it's essentially reinforcement learning. So you're training the AI model consistently. If it's not sure, it asks a human, and every now and again, a human checks its work and says, "Yeah, you're doing a great job," or
Right. Right.
"Oops, it's getting these wrong," right?
Right. Right.
So
Okay. Good stuff. Thank you.
so
you'll need to
using those
reshare your
models,
slides, Jay.
yeah, so using the models that Todd had just actually brought up, when you, let me just reshare this. Where's my screen? Okay. So using those models that Todd brought up, there's a lot of different co-pilots, as you can see. Occasional users, task workers, sales may also need their own custom co-pilot or their own version of co-pilot. DevOps may need their own version. Security team may need their own version too. So having the ability to create pilot groups in this circumstance is hugely beneficial because at that point you get to define what your organization
Hey, Anthem.
has an appetite for.
Hi.
And
I'm
is
on the
that
webinar.
Freddie?
Oh, sorry.
You
Sorry, I
gotta
thought it
mute.
was muted.
It's one of those days. It's
Just my
good.
son.
It's
Just my
perfect.
son talked to me outside the window.
I love it. I love it. And my teams actually just shut off for a minute while Todd was talking too. So it was perfect timing on all this stuff. So anyways, so hugely beneficial building out pilot groups. So in many, software deployment cases, maybe it's not beneficial, but doing that with Copilot and understanding, what the appetite is for the organization and the types of Copilots they need to make the organization successful is certainly great and an emphasis of it. But you also gain advocates, right? And I think that's a big part of rolling out a pilot group with this to make sure that it is the adoption is good, make sure that you have reinforcement training, and make sure that the organization really has the appetite for it. So let's talk about a couple of different areas. This is Microsoft's training recommendations, So Microsoft has built for you and for everybody this curriculum. Now, the curriculum is great, and I certainly recommend going through as much as possible on it. There's a couple of ones I want to point out. I think they're the most highly beneficial. Right? So we want to do the Copilot Lab, and we'll talk about a little bit about this later on in the session. Copilot Lab, just at a high level, it's a place that Microsoft gives you with web-enabled versions of applications, web-enabled prompts, and things like that, so you can really just play around with it with the team. This right here.
Jake, can you explain this? So the Copilot Lab, is that playing with it as if like in Excel, in the Excel app and figuring out how to use Copilot, or is it using the Copilot Studio or both?
You can use it Excel. So you pull up a web version of Copilot. I'm sorry, a web version of Excel itself. You can interact with Copilot through that web version of Excel using some custom prompts, and it really helps with the adoption of the learning and just really just testing things out in an environment that's not connected to yours. So it's great. It's a great lab. The crafting effective prompts, I think, for me, is highly beneficial. Right. So it's a 2-hour course. It's a must-have. The problem is it's a 2-hour course, and crafting, becoming a prompt engineer, there's a lot of information that gets thrown at you over time. So there's another one that I want to talk about. It's the article. This right here, it's about a 15-minute read. So it's nice. It's about a 15-minute read. And once you go through the crafting the effective prompts, take a look at that every couple of weeks, every month. It'll help you refine, help you, jog your memory, help you get better with it. Because some people remember everything that's said to them. I'm not one of them. But having the ability to go through with a quick reference sheet and some quick training, certainly beneficial. Technical readiness. So the video on how Copilot works. We talked about this over the past couple of weeks. We talked about the graph. We talked about semantic index. We're going to talk about prompt engineering today. This video itself, I think everybody should watch it. It's only 10 minutes, but it gives you the understanding of how security works and delivers results, how you interact with AI and how AI is thinking and interacts with you. So again, Microsoft puts together some great curriculums. These are the couple that I would really focus on at this point. So Microsoft 365 prompting do's and don'ts, right? So there's a couple of specific ones we'll just mention the high level what they are. We'll dive into a couple of them. The do's, you want to be clear and specific, and I'll give you examples of that later on with actual prompts. Make the prompts conversational. Have a conversation with it. We learn with Google that you ask questions in a certain way, very direct, and you kind of craft in the way. Keep it conversational with generative AI. Give it examples, and we'll dive into that, in a little bit as far as the way that you want to receive information, and ask for feedback at times, right? If it's not giving the results that you're expecting, ask the AI, what kind of information can I provide you to make this more accurate, to give me the results in this format? How can I help you? So you keep it conversational and ask for the feedback. You want to write legibly. So, on the don't side, you'll see don't use slang, jargon, informal language. To Todd's point, when, in other sessions, we've trained an entire generation of kids and young adults now to learn how to text using the letter R instead of ARE, TM instead of tomorrow. So they write in short code and in short terms. Can't use that with generative AI. Not right now. In the future, yes. But right now, no. You can't even use it. You can use it in some languages, but not all languages. You can't use it with certain dialects, right? So future state, yes, it'll be possible. But for right now, you want to write legibly, clear, concise messaging, and you want to make sure that the questions you're asking and the way you're describing it, are formatted so that way it understands what you're asking. You want to check it for accuracy, and I've got some prompts that we'll look at too that deliver some inaccurate, or we're delivering some inaccurate results. Give it some details and be polite, right? So that's just a way that it works properly and trains. Because again, it's all delivering back the information to you that in a format that you want to consume. Don't be vague. We'll look at that in a little bit. Don't request inappropriate or unethical content. Microsoft has a responsible AI. If you're looking at farming data on, a group of people that Microsoft may deem could be dangerous, right? We're not going to give you that information, even though it may be readily available on a website. We're not going to give you that information because there may be an ulterior motive, and it's trying to look for that too. We already talked about the slang. Conflicting instructions are you're trying to have different AI do multiple things, multiple steps, but you're not being clear in how you're asking it to do that. You're not giving it a path of start here, deliver this, deliver that, because sometimes when you ask it, it has to be iterative. It has to learn the prior thing in order to give you the results in the next one. If you're giving it conflicting and not concise prompts, then you're not going to get the results you want. And then always with AI, you want to let it finish its thought where possible. Interrupting it can start messing with the prompts later on. So if you stop it in the middle of a thought, it doesn't complete its thought, and then you're not getting full information and accurate information later on down the road with additional prompts.
So
Got
do you have the if you don't have it, I have it right in front of me. Do you have the prompting guide handy from Microsoft?
This one?
Yeah, it's actually a screenshot from it that I put in the slide deck. I mean, do you have the actual whole document?
This one?
That's
The
the
prompt
one.
ingredients?
That's
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. This is a big deal. I mean, on the subject of writing good prompts, I can't tell you how many times I have this conversation with clients. There we're handing people an incredibly powerful tool with essentially no training. And it seems like an obvious thing, but these four components should be in every prompt that you write. And frequently they're not. And so, I this morning I was presenting to the Rhode Island CEO Council, and one of the people in the meeting is the CEO of a very large nonprofit in the state. And we were talking about AI, and he said, well, I don't think AI actually works all that well in terms of drafting content. And I said, why do you think that? And he said, because the young people in my organization are using tools like ChatGPT to write on our behalf. And he said, I can always spot AI language. He said, it's always a little flowery and structured in kind of a weird way. And I said, I would love to play a game with you. I said, create a task, piece that you need written, give it to 3 of your people and give it to me. And then when it comes back, you tell me which ones are AI written. And I said, I said, I'll submit 3 responses, only one of which will be AI written. And I said, I bet you'll have a hard time finding it. And the reason is because when I write a prompt, it's going to not only include these things for context. I would take 2 or 3 of the blog posts that the organization's put up recently and download them and attach them to the prompt, which you can do right in Copilot. You can attach files. I would take the website. And so my prompt is going to say, using the attached documents and the website located at www.theirdomain.com, draft a paragraph on this upcoming event in the voice and context of this organization, be sure to include a table that includes all of the metadata for the event, location, date, time, right? So my prompt is going to be very detailed. Honestly, not a lot different than what I would do with an intern, frankly, right? If I had an intern that was young and didn't really know the organization, I would give them some context and I would say, oh, read these few blog posts, make sure you're trying to recapture our voice. Well, AI is essentially an intern. It doesn't know your voice. You have to tell it, right? So, the detail of saying, okay, here's what we're trying to do. Here's the context of how you're going to try and do it. Use these data sources to help educate, help inform it. And what does success look like, right? Success looks like a paragraph and a table. I've now told AI specifically what I want, and the result will be much higher quality than if I just said, write a paragraph about this event, right? So does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. It seems to me that this is where Copilot maybe has an inherent advantage over some of the other LLMs like ChatGPT, right? Because it has direct access to the Microsoft Graph and all of my emails. So if I said I want it to
Yes.
sound like me, or I want it to sound like my boss, or I want it to sound like, something in one of the corporate documents, model it after that document over there. That seems like it's something that it's going to have an inherent advantage of me being able to specifically point, and also just its training over time, right? Is that a fair assessment?
100%. And I have an AI model that I built to demo using generative AI, where the prompt, the if you sent an email to me, in fact, I think it's still actually active. Um, if you sent an email to me and the subject line was hashtag demo and just asked a question about AI, this thing will respond. And the way that it responds, the prompt says, through the lens of a Microsoft centric IT services organization based in Rhode Island and using language consistent with www.envisionsuccess.net, respond to the following question. And then I put a variable in for the question that was asked by drafting an email. Be sure to sign the email consistent with emails that Todd Knapp from the organization has drafted. And so I sign almost every email the same way. I use a little tilde in front of my name. Just it's a habit, because when I used to handwrite stuff, I used to throw a little dash there and then sign my name. And it's just become the way that I write. And I typically write best regards, tilde, Todd S. Knapp, right? And I almost always use my middle initial. This thing writes incredibly nice email responses to my customers that try it. And it'll say, like, somebody asked a question at one point about, what is the difference between generative AI and prior versions of AI? And it wrote a 2-paragraph summary. And then it said, as a Microsoft partner, Envision has a number of people that are capable of helping you build these kinds of technologies. To learn more, visit our website. Thank you for taking the time to reach out. Best regards, tilde Todd S. Knapp. It was very hard to discern it from being my actual writing.
That's very cool. Yep, this makes total sense.
Take a look at an easy version of the prompt. So using the goal, context, source, and expectation. So provide a summary of the updates. So that's a goal that I've recently received from CISA. So that's a context. So I'm looking for, I'm sorry, yeah, the CISA. The source is in my email, and the expectation is please display the results in a bulletized format, right? So you can make them very simple, very small, not overly elaborate. And I'm being very specific because I do a lot of work with CISA, but I just wanted to summarize some things and not have any sensitive information come up, right? So these are coming from that specific email. If I asked it from CISA, it would actually display everything on there. So you can start with very simple prompts, and as long as you follow that format, it's going to give you the data that you're largely looking for. Now, I get a lot of these emails daily, so they'll actually reference it too, so you can pull them up. So it's a nice, quick way to summarize information. You can create very elaborate prompts, and I do that offline too. Actually, I will take up a notepad or or something thereof, and I will create a very elaborate prompt as far as developing software for me. I may create, software package that'll go out and get information as far as the latest breaches for organizations, and then correlate that with all the organizations that I work with. So that way I can get an early alert before that breach letter comes out, right? You can create custom software depending on how elaborate you want to get with those prompts.
So one of the things around prompting, one of the things that I'm curious about is, giving it feedback on its responses and how well it trains. And I have a lot more experience with ChatGPT on that than with Copilot specifically. But
Yep.
One of the things I noticed was that ChatGPT for a while had both a thumbs up and a thumbs down button, and I think they removed the thumbs up button not too long ago. So what I was trying to figure out is, my thank yous and giving it some kind of feedback at the end, verbal, or in text. Does that have value at the end, or is it smart enough to figure out whether or not it's to train, and learn and get better just from, the lack of negative feedback?
Yeah, so I find that the organizations, and it could certainly change, but the organizations that are building the models are leveraging those feedback loops to improve their models itself. If they're delivering you poor results and you're thumbs downing it, or if it delivers you a bunch of results and you're abandoning it, they're not getting the proper feedback. So when you're courteous, when you say the thank you, the information was successful. My understanding is that they put a higher emphasis on that when they train their newer models. And again, it could change company to company. GPT could do it one way, Claude could do it a different way, Copilot could do it a different way. But that's been my experience with it.
Yeah,
I was just more thinking from
I was actually
training.
just gonna say Claude in particular does sentiment analysis on user input following delivery of a response.
Okay.
And it uses that for reinforcement training. GPT does not. OpenAI does not do that.
Okay.
OpenAI requires you to click the thumbs up in order to reinforce it.
But they took that away. They took the thumbs up
Right.
away. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that when, for what it's worth, I think that when OpenAI first started out, what they ended up doing is different than what they thought they were doing. I think the original idea at OpenAI was, hey, let's crowdsource training
Right.
this GPT model. And then with the number of people that started using it and started trying to break it, they ended up having to say, okay, well, we're mature enough now that maybe we don't want the general public doing the model training. We want them doing the model refinement for their own use cases. But if you look at Copilot specifically, I'm going to steal a screen share a sec.
Yeah.
This is a prompt I use a lot, Tyler. Provide me a table of emails from TLDR that I haven't read in the past 30 days. TLDR is a newsletter that I get. I really love it. I catch most of their emails. Occasionally I will miss one. So I like this prompt. I can do the same thing in Outlook, by the way. I can do a search in Outlook for TLDR emails and then add a filter for unread and then add a filter for time, but it's just way faster for me to do it this way. And this way, I get the subject of the email, a snippet from it, and when it came in, and every one of them, I can just click. And, as I mouse over it, you'll see like,
You're not
these are
sharing
the
your screen,
actual
Todd.
link.
If you were demoing it, you're not sharing it.
What the what?
I mean, I was following along with what you're doing for.
Sorry.
There you go.
So there's my prompt. Provide me a table of emails from TLDR that I haven't read in the past 30 days. So it's very specific. Use email as the source. Give me a table as the result. I'm interested in TLDR timeframe. And it gives me this sweet little table, and I can just literally click the references and it'll pull me directly into those emails. But the way that it snippets it tells me whether or not I even want to bother chasing those down. But you'll notice that in Microsoft,
They do have the thumbs up.
Right. Microsoft's model still lets me do direct reinforcement, but Microsoft doesn't do reinforcement from sentiment analysis.
Okay.
Every AI model is a little different, but I like the way this one works.
Yeah, and I was more thinking about it from
Jay.
I'm sorry. I was thinking about it from a user training point of view, right?
Yeah.
Whether you would want to tell people, hey, if you like the answer, when it nails it, hit the thumbs up button, and if to just give it that feedback so you get better and better responses.
So,
Excellent.
so I'll tell you an interesting thing that I just tested the other day. I actually created an AI. So in AI Studio, a Copilot Studio, one of the things you can do is you can extend Microsoft's native Copilot. So I modified the end response for an interaction with Copilot and had it ask the question, did you find this helpful? And anytime somebody clicks yes, it writes it into a database for me so that I can pull my own analytic on the interaction, which was pretty slick. So instead of trying to get it from the thumbs up, thumbs down, which trains the model, I just want to know from the user's point of view, was this valuable for you?
Yeah, what's our success rate? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
You
That's
create,
great.
you tend to create elaborate prompts, simple prompts. Have you done both? How do you interact with it?
For myself, I tend
Yeah.
to try to give it a lot of context. That's what I
Okay.
found is really, really valuable, is to give it a lot of context. I haven't given it, sometimes I'll give it examples of like, I like that piece. But I've been really successful by giving it like, okay, here's where this is coming from. Here's where this started. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's who my audience is. All that kind of stuff. And then, and here's the voice I'm trying, I'm very surprised at how well it does with like tone, right? I want it to be lighthearted. I want it to be serious. I want it to be like Hulk Hogan, right? That kind of stuff.
And then change formats how it delivers it too, in table format and paragraph format. Yeah, excellent. So I've got a bunch of different prompts that we could go through, but you're already very familiar with it, so we can certainly
Yeah, I mean, but
skip
through
over
the
them.
lens, so for myself, that's one thing, right? I feel like I actually do pretty good prompting, and I've had pretty good success. But that's not the same as training my organization, which I think the tools you're giving me is what I'm really here for. Is how do I get the entire organization ready for this if and when we're ready to invest in it?
Yep, absolutely. So it's prompt development is a huge part of it. The Microsoft Learning Platform is a big integral piece of that. But those are the final steps, right? Because you need to have the foundational elements of security, the way the data is structured, all of that stuff set up first. And then at that point, you're training your users. And it's really just training them on prompt development. And giving them simple examples, and I'll just share my screen real quick, just so we can just touch on it. Simple examples.
Tyler.
What's
While
that?
he's doing that, I said while he's doing that, sharing his screen and setting up, one of the things that rings true with a lot of users when I'm training them is the interrogative engagement with AI. And the example I always use is I'll see my wife and I play this same dumb game all the time where she's like on her phone doing something and I'll go, "Oh, what you doing?" And she'll say, "Texting." Obviously you're texting. Who
Right.
Tell me more, who are you texting? "Oh, I'm texting Allie." "Is everything okay?" "Oh yeah, we're just chatting about blah 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 blah." And then I start getting a real answer, right? AI is the same way, and users need to interact with AI the way they would interact with a human. And that's the point of conversational AI, is to iteratively interact with it. So I'm sorry, Jay, I'll let you pick back up.
No. Perfect.
No, I think that's a great point though, Todd, because once you start using it, that becomes second nature, and you don't even think that you forget that you're doing that, but you
Users have
explain
control.
that to novices of this is a multi-step thing. Go back and forth with it. That's not in thinking back to when I first started using it, that shocked me. Right, that they could leverage the prior prompt and its prior response and just say, okay, refine this in this way. And then it would actually understand it within the context of the rest of the conversation. That's not something that people are used to, because Google doesn't work that, nothing you use works that way other than humans, and most humans don't.
Right.
Not without a little coaxing,
Yeah, at least not the way you expect.
right? So yeah, and you're more than familiar with it. Writing simple prompts, and you get some information, which is good. And I'll start with a simple prompt at times, to really dive into things and topics I don't know. Then afterwards, you're starting to really refine it to your point. As far as getting more specific, crafting the length of this response, in a certain for a certain audience, and the type of information that you want and how you want it to conclude will give you a lot more benefit, right? And then you can reformat it too, and largely put it into other you put it in table format if you want, right? Deliver this instead of in a blog post, summarize it in table format. And you can certainly do that, later on. We'll just go through a couple of other quick prompts. So one that was interesting that we're running through today, describe and vision technology advisors. And this is one that's going to be iterative. It's going to be, here's a first one, right? It's going to tell us a little bit about Envision, but there's more than one Envision technology advisors in the United States, right? So with this one, it'll start, pulling up different sources and things like that. Here's a little bit about the organization. Describe the organization services and provide a company of a table of the demographics and a list of employees. This at times can bump into Microsoft's responsible AI, and sometimes it doesn't, right? It depends on how we craft it, right? It's telling us the services, but the responsible AI at that point, if it finds that we're trying to data mine people itself, and here it did. It said, we're going to give Todd, we're going to mention Brent, but additional employees. In a nice way, it's not giving me the full list of everybody, even though we have it listed on Envision's website, right? We can certainly go to Envision's website and start looking around and you'll find that. But this is where responsible AI is kind of taking over and throttling you. If you ask this question without the question prior, Microsoft in earlier examples, that from today that I had been interacting with, it was giving me results. It was giving me near full list of employees because it wasn't understanding, 2, 3, 4 questions before that I was trying to data mine Envision. Right. So now the responsible AI is kicking in and doing that. We'll take a look at this one. We're going to ask it for Envision Technology Advisors executive team located in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. The reason I'm bringing this in place is this one right here shows us it's Todd and it's Jason. You have to fact check this. And the reason is earlier in the day, as I was interacting with Copilot, it was delivering me a third person, a person named David. I've never heard of this David. I've never interacted with this person, David. I was interacting with Copilot asking, where did you find this David? It was giving me reference and sources. I would go into them and it was listing envisionsuccess.net, our website, and it was giving me a 404 page. And I'm like, visit Envision, find this person, cite the resource, update your data. And now it certainly has updated it, right? So now you're seeing the relevant information. But all that to say is, even though your generative AI is giving you answers, fact check it. Because oftentimes it can hallucinate or it can confuse Envision Technology Advisors with another Envision somewhere else in the world, combine the results, and now David's the president of our company, even though we've never heard of him. Right? So don't just trust, trust and verify. So I think one of the beneficial parts now, because you're very familiar with prompting, we'll talk about adoption, right? And I think this will be where this will be somewhat beneficial, I think, because as far as measuring user engagement, that's where you're really going to go. So when you do, you just go to admin.microsoft.com, and then we'll follow over to reports. Do you have access to this side of your organization or no?
I probably don't.
Okay.
But
fair enough. So after you get Copilot in place and after you're interacting with it, you have the ability to go to admin.microsoft.com and we'll find reports and then adoption score. Now this will tell you how much your users are really interacting with Copilot itself and the communications and how people are working with the graph and as opposed to within your organization as opposed to other organizations. So our organization, we have a 74% over 54 as a benchmark, right? We're a little bit higher, than the norms. But as far as leveraging tools to see if people are interacting and if people are being successful with AI, there are several of them with there. Adoption score is a pretty good one. Todd, do you want to pull open the Viva? Because I know we're getting close on time.
You bet. One sec.
So with this, we're going to go to insights.cloud.microsoft.com. I don't have the access to it right now. Todd does, though. So with that, when we get into Viva, we're going to be looking largely at readiness to show the meetings that we have, show the chats, the documents, the interactions. We'll show adoption. We'll see how people are really using Copilot itself. And you can get
it's going to be important that I actually share the right screen.
It could be,
Yeah, so this is an example of an adoption dashboard. Part of what we want out of adoption is to be able to quantify for the executive team what the investment has yielded. And we can measure this and we can get actual sense of, money in terms of money saved. So if I'm looking at a value calculator and I'm saying, hey, in US dollars, we're paying our people an average of $98 per hour across the organization, then I can see that the total saved in the month I was measuring was $4,214 across the 52 licenses that I had deployed. So my 52 licenses that I had deployed cost me $30 a license. I spent $1,560 to have it. It's almost a 3.5 to 1 return on investment in terms of what we've saved. And this is all very configurable. So I can define what a Copilot assisted hour looks like, right? I can define whether or not, what's the monetary time value associated with individual Copilot actions, how many meeting summarizations actually resulted in time saved. A lot of people don't realize what these features actually are. Like, one of the biggest things about the meeting summarization side of Copilot is that I'm famous for this problem. I get booked repeatedly for 2 or 3 meetings at the same time by my staff. Even though Microsoft has a free busy feature, I don't understand why people in America can't understand that tool. I get double booked and triple booked anyway. I can right click on a meeting and click follow. If you've got a Copilot license and you haven't tried this, it changes your life. You click follow, and your users, when they're in the meeting, even though you're not there, your icon will show up and it'll say Todd Knapp following. And they now know that even though you can't attend the meeting, you're going to get a full AI transcript, a breakdown of the meeting. You'll get the recording, you'll get tasks and notices of where you were mentioned in the meeting. Very powerful thing. So
I got a question about that. Is there something
Yep.
you have to do in the meeting to enable the Microsoft or Copilot to follow the details of the meeting and then do the summarization and the transcripts? Do you have to record the meeting? Do you have to allow Copilot transcription or Copilot summarization?
So you used to have to record the meeting. You don't have to do that anymore. But there is something that needs to be done in the admin center to allow Copilot summarization and transcript of meetings. And you have to have a Copilot license, and it has to be rolled out to your Outlook. So there are some prerequisites. I can send you the prereq guide for it, Tyler.
My question is more around, there's been some reluctance. Like, one of the things our team, and I won't get into the, whether it's whether it's a good idea or not, but
Right.
they were talking about restricting the ability to record meetings because they felt like people in the meetings wouldn't speak as freely if anything they said could come back to haunt them and that kind of stuff. And I was just trying to figure out if we had a way to actually control when, if the people in the meeting, not at the admin, role, but the people in the meeting could say, hey, for this meeting, we're opting in or out of the ability for this stuff to come back at us. Anything we say verbally, does it stay here? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, or
Right.
can somebody come by later? And even from a legal point of view, right? I'm talking about an employee. I'm talking about an employee a problem, right? And me and somebody, not the employee, me and somebody else are discussing it. Right later, is that a discoverable item legally if action is taken, because the AI can go back and recreate the meeting, those kinds of things?
Yeah. So yes, all of that policy is very configurable. So
By
in
meeting?
order for a meeting to be evaluated by Copilot, at a minimum, there needs to be a transcript. And
Okay.
so and there is actually a feature in the admin console where you can turn on what's called transparent transcript, meaning that even if the transcript isn't publicly available, Copilot itself gets a copy of the transcript so that it can use for meeting summarizations, but that can also be turned off. And you can certainly also have automated legal notices that pop up as a result of all that too. And we can apply sensitivity labels against the meeting themselves to control that. So yeah, that's all very configurable, and people can opt out.
So I can go into my meeting and say, don't transcribe this meeting, and then whatever said there. It's like they're in the old cone of silence. The
Yeah.
cone of silence.
Cone of silence. Yeah.
One of the greatest gags in the history of TV.
Yeah, absolutely. And and by the way, I mean, just kind of closing the loop on the training side of the conversation, because this is an adoption discussion, right? We're talking about how to measure adoption. Part of the adoption piece is really getting people to understand how to use, not just the prompting, but the actual tool set itself. So I was gonna steal your screen share. Is that all right, Jay?
Yeah, just Copilot Lab. Yeah.
Okay. So this is actually a demo I do, Tyler, with some of the customers I talk to. I give them these prompts. I say, okay, open up Copilot, type in, fill in the blank, the cow jumped over the blank. And it comes back, and Copilot almost always comes back, says, oh, the cow jumped over the moon. This time it gave me a moon emoji. And then I tell them, ask it if it's an accurate statement. Copilot comes back and starts explaining, well, it's a nursery rhyme. It's fun and imaginative. It's not literally accurate. And then I say, all right, well, give me a response that is more possible, more accurate. And then I ask it again. And it comes back, says, oh, a more accurate response would be the cow jumped over the fence. Then I shift the conversation completely. Give me a table of names of famous dogs. And it starts spitting out names of famous dogs. Then I say, how is it capable of jumping over the moon? So now I'm actually asking it a question for which it needs limited memory to respond to. It almost always breaks Copilot, and it'll come back and it'll actually tell you, select a new chat. This is how I train users to say, listen, you're having a conversation with an AI. You're not having a conversation with a human. It is a limited memory AI. And so it needs the conversation to have continuity. If you need to change subjects, click the new chat button, then change subjects. And now you'll get better responses from AI. And that one particular demo seems to unlock people's brains because that process of iteratively engaging with the AI to get to an answer they want that's accurate about what can a cow jump over gets them to understand that piece, and then leading them to something that kind of breaks the conversation, helps them learn where the boundaries are. So if you're building a training program for your users, think along those lines. That seems to work very well. All right, Jay, I'll hand it back to you, buddy.
Just gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, for sure.
So on the training side, you have Copilot Lab, and we'll just spend a minute on here. Here's a great place that you can actually start sending your organization, your users, so that way they can meet and start interacting with it. These are the web versions that we talked about earlier. So you have Copilot itself, you have your Outlook version, your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and all that. So actually dive into each one of these, and they will be web-enabled versions of that application stack with Copilot. So you can start creating documents, understanding how it's going to interact. It's very helpful as far as adoption. But beyond that, they'll start giving you more and more prompts too, right? If you want to start understanding where to begin with it. Catch me up on a meeting, get a to-do list. You can view all the prompts. Microsoft has more than a few. And they'll dive more into the learning stuff. So it reinforces the Microsoft learning track, and it's a great free place to do it. So Copilot Lab, I would certainly highly recommend that people start looking in there and visiting it if you're on your Copilot journey. So with that,
do we have to have anything enabled to do that, or could I go to that today?
You should be able to go to it today, as long as you just sign in. Then you'd have the access to it.
Okay.
Let me just go back to this. All right, so wrapping it up, because we're just about at time. Copilot is a right solution for your organization. Is it sales? Is it Copilot Pro? Is it Copilot for DevOps, OpenAI, and Azure, or something else, right? So building out the adoption plan, setting the security in there, testing it out, and then making sure you have those users, those advocates really working with you and then advocating on your behalf for the organization, for the technology is really just a key piece for that. Security is a foundational element. AI aside, you need zero trust in there. If you have documents, if you work in Microsoft 365, you need sensitivity labels, you need information protection, you need communication compliance. You have to have that. It secures your information. And AI, thankfully, gets to leverage that technology. But aside from that, you absolutely need it. It's a foundational element for the organization. And then to be successful with any AI, you need successful training and adoption program. So those are the keys to success here. And that's largely it. We'll start the series back over on September 5th. So if you're interested in, certainly coming back, I'd like to update them. We'll take the content that we discussed today, start integrating some of that into next month's session. If some new features come out, we'll be adding those too. But as
Or
far as
send some colleagues, Tyler, that you think would
Well,
benefit from this.
I absolutely will. I'm encouraging people to come. I know Gio Maldonado came from our team, came last week. I guess he couldn't make it this week. And I know he and I talked about it. He really appreciated the session. So it wasn't because he didn't get value out of it that he didn't come today. So yes, I will definitely continue to socialize that throughout this organization because it's I think these are great and been very helpful. And I'm going to try to continue to push people to attend.
So one of the things, Tyler, because it's you on the call, I like asking AI how to use AI.
Yeah.
There's a very interesting thing that happens there. So this is a prompt. Just tell me about the best AI tools for summarization of documents. And it spits out several products. Interestingly, it didn't spit itself out. That was fascinating to me. But have you used Perplexity yet?
No, nope.
Yeah, do it at a time when you've got some cycles to burn because you'll go down a rabbit hole with Perplexity. Perplexity is a conversational AI, and this is the same prompt from Perplexity. Tell me about the best AI tools for summarization of documents. First of all, right at the top, here are the sources. Second, here's our answer. But most interestingly, at the bottom, it starts pitching to you other follow-up questions that you might want to explore.
Oh, wow.
And that little aspect of Perplexity is one of my favorite things about this tool. I have inadvertently spent an hour after just trying to get a very simple answer. I popped something into Perplexity because I wanted the source material really quickly, and it references all the sources, like point and click, kind of simple. And an hour later, I was like way down the rabbit hole looking at other things because I just started following, like, okay, for academic research. And then when I got into the academic research one, that then suggested some things, and then that suggested things, and pretty soon I was gone. So
I can absolutely see that. Wow. Yes, for sure. For sure. That's
so
awesome.
anyway, yeah,
That's
explore
great.
that. You'll like it.
So do we have time? Do you guys have time for a couple questions or do we need
Yeah,
to
man.
wrap up?
Yeah.
So
No, let's
my
do it.
questions around adoption are around, what have you seen in terms of, and this has more to do with sort of selling it within the organization because it's not cheap, right? Depending on how you look at it. If you look at it from the point of view of if you save an hour of everybody's work every day, it's dirt cheap. If you look at it from just it's almost as much as your E5 or your E3 license to begin with, it's not cheap. So trying to sell it in the organization, what are some of the, my guess is, and you tell me where I'm wrong, that some of the most common use cases are around summarizing meetings, summarizing email, help me write this email, help me, improve this Word document, maybe make a PowerPoint. Is that, and I
Sure.
hear a lot about cases in Excel of, find me the nugget of insight in this spreadsheet. I'm dubious as to whether that gets used other than effectively by other than a small number
Niche.
of data analysts and that kind of stuff. So is that am I on board, right? Or is there like a massive use case out there for the Copilot, for the core Copilot 365 tool that I'm missing that I could talk to my management about and say, hey, this is a thing that we can do. And I'm not talking about custom Copilots. I understand that we'd have to build some, right? But the out of the box stuff. Am I missing a massive use case that would, be game changing for the organization that would be easy to understand if you were a senior manager?
I think each
Um,
department itself has their own use for Copilot, right? And for example, project management may need to find information from 6 months prior. It could be in Teams messages, chats, it could be in notepads, it could be in project plans, it could be all over the place or all of them together. And they need to pull that together very quickly and seamlessly instead of spending hours. Project management can just have a simple prompt that pulls it and cites all the sources. And SE teams are delivering informations. Your solution engineers are delivering architecture documents, right? And they need to pull information from Dell and from HP and Microsoft and all these different vendors and builds that they've done from years ago, solution sheets, spec sheets, and all that. You have a custom prompt for them, and they're very quickly able to go scan multitudes of information and formulate something that's consumable and will allow them to certainly pull on a different string. So HR has their own as well, right? Because HR may need to deal with communication compliance, threats, harassment, meeting information, all sorts of things in all these different silos. So each department themselves, I think, has an individual use case, but collectively having the ability to have all that information very easily accessible is largely the tool. I have found that it's not a 10 minutes a day savings. To me, it's scalability. I can do 2, 3, 4x the work that I normally could have because I can get information and I can build, programs that I would normally have had to farm out and wait weeks for. I can get information that would take me hours. I can get it in seconds to minutes, right? So personally, I use it across, multiple departments, but I think each department has their own use case for it. Ty, I know you have some thoughts too.
I do, yeah. I actually think there is a killer use case out there that is really not talked about enough. And I'm going to show it to you live. You've got hybrid workforce happening at APSO like everyone else in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Managers tend to struggle in a hybrid environment with understanding whether or not their teams are being productive. This is, in my mind, a killer use case for managers. What's the latest from Matt Medeiros, organized by emails, chats, and files? So Matt's our marketing guy, right? And so this is emails that Matt sent, chats that he's been working on, and I vetted all this just while you were talking to make sure I'm not going to expose anything secret. And then files that he's been working on, and I can mouse over any of them and go take a look at the pieces he's working on as he's working on them. I use this for several key members of my leadership team on a near daily basis, and they have no earthly idea. What they do know is they're getting way fewer calls from me asking them what's been going on, and I'm not micromanaging them. I don't have to. I can get the answers to my questions without bothering my team. And it gives me a high degree of visibility into what's going on organizationally. And there have been moments where I had a weird interaction with somebody, and I'm like, is this colleague really working out? What are they actually doing? This tool has opened my eyes more than once, where I'm like, oh, these people are super busy. They're super productive. They're just working in a sphere that doesn't intersect with mine much. So
Right. No, that's
they're not
really
doing a great job. I just don't know.
That's a really eye-opening use case. That's great. That's great. Yeah. Then one last question on this is because the other place where I think there's potential huge benefit, but I don't know how mature and how effective these two copilots are. One is, do you have and I have to go too, but a quick 2 cents on the Azure DevOps and how good is it at writing code? I know it's really good at writing scripts. And I know it's good at debugging code. Is it as good at building code? And then the other one is Copilot for Power Apps, Power Automate. Is that,
All right.
to me, that seems like a killer app at some point for an organization.
Yeah. Copilot for Power Apps right now gets a 4 out of 10 from me.
Okay.
It's still young. Copilot for Power Automate gets a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Copilot for GitHub gets a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I said DevOps. I meant GitHub. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah,
Really, it's that good.
GitHub Copilot is awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
you create
powerful.
the prompt right, and then you are getting phenomenal results from it with very few iterations to get the final product. It is amazing.
I've heard mixed reviews, but I don't know how much, you never know how to take that from people who, there's some code snobs out there that think if it's not written the way I would write it, it's no good. There's other people who might be doing terrible prompting, and there's other people whose information might be outdated, right? And then there's some people that are really, really smart and might say, this isn't up to our standard. I don't know,
well, I mean, look, even if it's not, I mean, I have people all the time that I'll say, can you do me a favor? Draft, like I do it with my SE team constantly. Can you write a statement of project outcomes for me for this client's project? And I tell them up front, I'm probably going to end up rewriting, half of it, but it's faster for me to edit something than it is for me to originate something, right? Code is the same way. You know,
that's
that
true.
if they're using GitHub for Copilot for GitHub properly, they're getting the bottom 2/3 of the headache out of the way. They quickly identify the parts they don't like, they tune it up, and we're at an end result, in half the time.
Yeah. Well, go analyzing my code, troubleshooting my code, building quick scripts. I know it's really good at that. I've heard it's really good at building test cases. I wasn't sure, and your point is well taken on just building new code. It still gets you. It's still an efficiency gain, and
Yeah.
in some cases it might be great.
There is a very, very cool thing starting to happen too with it now too, where the prompt is evaluate the following code file for security.
Right.
And it'll go through and it'll call out, these are all the open source libraries that you are using. Are you aware of all of these? Right. So if I'm a code reviewer in a QA process, I may have a junior programmer that went off book and used some really gnarly, risky open source library, from some unknown dude in a basement. It'll surface that for me. Right. So I think some of the things, I wonder what would have happened or what could have been avoided with CrowdStrike had they been using that tool. Because I mean, it would have found a buffer full of zeros in a second. Right. All right, I have to run because I have another
me
meeting.
too.
I gotta jump
I
to,
really
but
appreciate this. I appreciate all the attention I got, and the
oh yeah, man.
yeah,
Always.
this was great. The personal version of this session was great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
day.
Have a great day.
All right,
See you.
bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.